Hi guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with the next installment of my Books Beside My Bed video. Every week I recap the last 7 days worth of reading. So this is what I read last week. Last week was the week beginning the 13th until the 19th of January. I read 8 books last week. If I break down those 8 books, 2 of them were picture books, 1 was a teacher reference book. The last 5 books were all standard novels, 2 of which were young adult and 3 were adult novels. I read a total of 2,850 pages and my yearly reading total is up to 21 books. The first book that I read last week was Cibola Burn by James S.A. Corey. This is the 4th book in the Expanse series and it was published in 2014 by Orbit and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It is set after the mysterious gate has opened that allows human ships to travel through to planets that can sustain human life, and Holden and the crew of the Rossi are sent through to help mediate a dispute between some belters who have settled on a planet and the corporation who claims that they have bought or purchased the planet and the rights to it as such. And if you know anything about the series, Holden is probably not the person that you would pick to negotiate. And in fact, he was picked because they thought that he would fail miserably. This was a really interesting read. This one is one of the longer ones, I think, in the series, and I really enjoyed it because I quite like the way that the 2 authors actually write these characters and the interplay and the fact that we get the perspectives of at least 4 different characters in every book. But it was quite slow moving. I don't mind it because I love being in this world, but if you're someone who likes really fast-paced books, this is probably not going to be your favorite in the series. I read this for the Tome Infinity Challenge class structure, but as with last week, I can tell you all the other categories that it fits into. Just give me a sec, I've got to check my handy dandy list on my laptop. So it also fit air, water, food and sleep, medicine, education, trading, travel, urban settlements, class structure, government, higher ed, technology, futurism, and space opera. See, if you haven't participated in this readathon this round, next time you'll have so many choices. The second book I read was Nemesis Games, book 5 in the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey, and I was so delighted that I actually got to back 2 of these books, and I'm hoping that in maybe the last week of January I actually get to read the 6th book because I'm so excited. This was published in 2015 by Orbit and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I think it is my favorite book in the series so far because in this particular book, instead of getting 4 different characters' perspectives, well, we still get 4 different characters' perspectives, but this time, for the first time in the entire series, we get the perspectives of every member of the Rossi. So Holden, Naomi, Amos, and Alex all get chapters. And for the majority of this book, they're actually on different planets because they've had to put the Rossi in for repairs, and the majority of them use this as an opportunity to either go home or to chase up some unfinished business of their own. And as such, they're all split up. It was really, really fascinating because you get a lot more backstory on all of the characters, not just Holden. It was interesting for Holden, who is like my little precious character who just keeps making bad decisions, but he's really grown up by this book and you see what he's like without his crew and you understand, I think for the first time, just how much he relies on them and how much he needs family around him. But it was good for him because he had some character growth as a result of it. So I really loved this series. I won't really say much about this particular book because I think anything I do say will give it away, and obviously it's book 5 in a series, but it was a really enjoyable read and I still have a lot of questions about the characters and I'm really looking forward to reading book 6 to seeing how some of those are resolved. But it was just so satisfying to read, and this may have sparked a full-on Expanse obsession with me this week. I've gone through seasons 1 and 2 of the TV series as well, and I've had to track down a copy of season 3, which I ordered on DVD, which I have not done in such a long time. I have not ordered DVDs, but I really want to keep watching it and I cannot find it anywhere here because it was taken off Netflix when Amazon purchased the rights to continue the show. This may have taken over first spot as my favorite science fiction series of all time. I read this for the Tome Infinity Challenge Governments, but it also fits the following categories: air, water, food, sleep, shelter, medicine, oral communication, travel, urban settlements, class structures, government, technology, religion, futurism, and space opera. Then I read Gemina, which was a reread for me, and this is by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, and it is a young adult science fiction series that is told all through different varied formats, dossiers, interviews, chat logs, etc. And I listened to this on audio for the first time. This was a really fantastic read. I loved the Illuminae file series, and initially I thought that Illuminae was my favorite book of the series, but upon reread I actually think it's Gemina because I love the characters of Hannah and Nick and Ella. Ella is amazing. So this takes place alongside Illuminate, and it's a completely different character set for the majority of the book, as we follow Hannah and Nick, who are two teenagers who live aboard the Heimdall, which is a jump station, which is essentially like a station surrounding a giant wormhole in space that allows ships to travel from one part of the galaxy to another in a shorter time period. Because of the events that happened in Illuminate, Heimdall comes under attack and a lot of people are captured, a lot of people are killed, and Hannah and Nick are still free on the station and as such start their own little insurgent war, accompanied by Ella, who is Nick's cousin and is a total badass. I read this for the Tome Infinity Challenges Art and Music because Hannah keeps a journal in this, and the illustrations were provided by Marie Lu, and they are just absolutely awesome. But it also fits the following challenges: air, fire, food, sleep, shelter, medicine, education, oral communication, travel, urban settlements, government, higher ed, technology, arts, music, writing, and space opera. One of the picture books I read this week was Island Born by Juno Diaz. This was published in 2018 by Rock the Boat, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It is a gorgeous story about a little girl who is in school, and her teacher asks all of her students to go home, and as part of their homework they are to draw a picture that represents the place that they come from, because their school has a high population of immigrants. Now, Lola was very, very young when her family immigrated from their home country, and as such she doesn't have her own memories of it, and this is quite distressing for her because she doesn't really know how she's going to draw it. But what that does encourage her to do is to go out and speak to her family and the people that live around her who are from the same place. She then learns a lot about the history of the country that she came from, and the illustrations in this are just gorgeous. It is such a stunning little book, and I cannot wait to use it with my students in the classroom because we are doing a unit on cultural identity, and this is going to be a really great way to help, I think, articulate and have a discussion around those topics. Obviously that was not for Tome Infinity. The second picture book that I read this week was Armstrong by Torben Kuhlmann, and I believe this is a translated work. I think it was originally written in German. It was published in 2016 by North South Books, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It is a story that is told both in pictures and in words. Some of the pages have absolutely no words on them, but the illustrations are all just stunning. And this is the story of a mouse who dreams of reaching the moon. And this story is set just prior to the first moon landing, and it deals a lot with persistence and patience and never giving up and having a dream and being able to pursue it, which I think is a really great theme to have in a story. So this is another one that I'm hoping to share with my class this year, because the mouse faces a lot of adversity but overcomes it and is the first mouse on the moon, and it is just a gorgeous, gorgeously illustrated story. I wasn't reading this for Tome Infinity, but because it is a science fiction themed picture book, I was able to throw it into a few challenges. So air, water, fire, food, trading, travel, urban settlements, higher ed, technology. I'm putting it in for art because it's a picture book, writing because it's a picture book, and it's beautiful. Then I read Crucible, which is one of the Star Wars Legends books written by Troy Denning, and I suspect that this was probably the last book in the Legends series that was written, and I read this and I remembered how much I missed the original storylines that came from the Legends books, because they don't have the same characters that I love in the new Star Wars book universe. And it makes me really sad when I go back to revisit these books. This was published in 2013 by Century, and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars, just because the pacing was off in a few places. I did actually listen to the audio for this as well, which was, great, because there was some really great voice acting going on in there. And I was just so happy to revisit characters like Ben Skywalker and Jaina Solo and Jagged Fell, who are characters that I adored in the later books in the Legends universe. But this follows sort of the last adventure of Luke Skywalker, Han and Leia Solo, and Lando Calrissian, as Han and Leia go out to help Lando with a situation and then find themselves falling into the middle of a conflict that they were not originally part of, and it has unintended and disastrous consequences for the people who are living in the system where they are. I really enjoyed this. It is set 45 years after the events of A New Hope, so that gives you a bit of the timeline. I miss this Star Wars universe so much. I read Crucible for the Tome Infinity Challenge Religion, but it also fits the following categories: medicine, trading, procreation, oral communication, travel, technology, religion, music, and space opera. Then I read a non-fiction book, Reading for Life, Higher Quality Literacy Instruction for All by Lynn Stone. This is a teaching reference book, and it was published this year in 2019 by Routledge. And I'm not actually going to give ratings to these sorts of books because I actually think it's quite subjective, because this is a book that really questions a lot of current literacy practices in Australian schools. You know, that's interesting because I was reading a lot of it, and a lot of it is things that happen in my school, and yet there's also a lot of things that it says are really good teaching practices that I know also happen, and I think it's an interesting conversation to have, and I actually need to have this conversation with the leadership and the literacy team in my school to see where we sit on sort of ideas in here. But it does give a history of literacy instruction in Australia, as well as a bit of an overview of the UK and the US. And then it has some really practical applications for the teaching of literacy at the back. So it was a very interesting read, and I haven't sat down and read a teacher reference book in a long time. And the last book that I read this week was The Empress by S.J. Kincaid. This was published in 2017 by Simon & Schuster, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I really liked the Diabolic, and I don't know whether it was because I'd forgotten a lot of what had happened, but I found the beginning half of this book really difficult to read, and I actually think this book probably could have done with about 100 less pages that were just not necessary, or to have picked up the pace and gone a little bit further than the ending. It was a little bit predictable, but at the same time I also really enjoyed the ending, because S.J. Kincaid went somewhere with one of the characters that I didn't think she would do, and I'm very pleased that it happened. So this follows on from the Diabolic and Nemesis, who is a Diabolic, a being that is grown to look like a human but is faster, stronger, and is basically designed to protect humans, or they're human. She is currently engaged to Tyrus, who is the new emperor of this world, and together they are determined to change the expectations of the society, but they come up against some quite strong opposition from the ruling class, and as such they have to try and find a way to overcome that. It was very suspenseful, and you did feel a lot for the characters, and there were some real stakes in it. But I think, having spent a lot of time reading a lot of adult science fiction over the last couple of weeks, young adult science fiction has to be really good to get sort of more than a 3 or a 3.5 for me. I read this for the challenge dancing, and I remember saying in my original TBR video that I wasn't sure there was going to be dancing in this one. I was guessing, but there were about 3 references to dancing in it, so I'm happy because I didn't make things up. Yay! But it also fit the following challenges: air, water, fire, sleep, medicine, procreation, oral communication, travel, class structures, government, higher ed, technology, religion, invention, and dance. So those are the books that I read this week. By far the standout read for me was Nemesis Games, and I cannot wait to get to the next 2 books. I have purchased them, so they're sitting on my shelf and I can read them at any time I like. Well, sort of. I have to get through the rest of my Term Infinity TBR first before I can get to the next one, but after that, it's a free-for-all. In the comments below, let me know if you have read any of these books, or if you're planning on reading them, or alternatively, what have you been reading over the last week? I would love to know. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're having a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye guys.